In December 1944, the Ardennes forest of Belgium was supposed to be quiet. After months of relentless fighting across France and into the Low Countries, the Allies considered this sector a place for units to rest, reorganize, and prepare for the eventual push into Germany. But Adolf Hitler saw an opportunity in this calm. On December 16th, the German army launched a massive surprise counteroffensive that became known as the Battle of the Bulge. Its aim was to split the Allied lines, seize Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. Caught off guard, American units reeled under the sudden onslaught. The German advance drove deep into Belgian territory, threatening to encircle entire divisions. In the middle of this crisis, one name would become etched into history: Bastogne. Bastogne was a small market town, strategically vital because it served as a road junction where 7 major highways converged. Whoever held Bastogne controlled the flow of men and supplies through the Ardennes. Recognizing its importance, the Allies rushed reinforcements to the area. Among them was the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, under the command of Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe. The 101st had been in France, recovering from months of hard fighting in Normandy and Holland. Many of its men were still weary and undersupplied. Yet when the call came on December 18th, trucks and makeshift convoys whisked them 100 miles through winter roads to Bastogne. They arrived just as the German pincers closed around the town. By December 20th, Bastogne was encircled. The paratroopers dug in quickly, supported by elements of the 10th Armored Division and remnants of scattered infantry units. Supplies were scarce. Most soldiers carried only the ammunition and rations they had brought with them. Medical supplies were nearly non-existent. Winter clothing was short, leaving many men exposed to freezing temperatures and foxholes carved into frozen earth. On December 22nd, German envoys approached American lines with a written demand for surrender. They assured the Americans that continued resistance would bring complete destruction. General McAuliffe, awakened with the message, reportedly muttered in disbelief, "Ah, nuts." That single word became his official reply. The story spread quickly among the men, lifting spirits in the bitter cold. The nuts reply has since become one of the most famous one-word statements in military history. The siege of Bastogne would last for days, marked by artillery bombardments, probing attacks, and constant fear of a breakthrough. Yet the 101st held firm, refusing to give ground despite being outnumbered and cut off. The division's resolve became a symbol of American tenacity in the darkest moment of the European War. Life inside the encirclement was brutal. Snow fell steadily across the Ardennes, covering foxholes with a thin white crust. Temperatures dropped well below freezing. Soldiers of the 101st and attached units lacked proper winter gear. Many wrapped burlap or extra socks around their boots in desperate attempts to ward off frostbite. The cold was relentless. More men were evacuated with frozen feet than with bullet wounds. Rations were another problem. When the paratroopers arrived, each man carried only what he could fit in his pack: a few rations, some canned goods, and whatever cigarettes he hadn't already smoked. Once surrounded, resupply was impossible. The 101st depended on airdrops from the U.S. Army Air Forces, but December skies were often overcast, and German anti-aircraft fire made drops hazardous. Some supplies missed the drop zones entirely, falling into enemy hands. Men shared whatever food they could, trading chocolate bars for cigarettes or splitting a single can of meat between 2 foxholes. Artillery was a constant presence. German 88mm guns and mortars hammered American positions daily. Foxholes shook as earth and snow showered down. Men learned quickly to recognize the whistle of incoming rounds, and to pray that the next shell would not land directly on top of them. In turn, American artillery crews responded with counter-barrages, firing thousands of shells despite dwindling ammunition stocks. Yet the siege was not only about survival. The men of the 101st fought a series of sharp defensive actions around the perimeter. At the villages of Noville, Marvy, and Champs, German tanks and infantry launched repeated assaults, only to be driven back by stubborn paratroopers armed with bazookas, mines, and sheer determination. In Noville, for example, elements of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, supported by tanks of the 10th Armored Division, held off an entire German panzer regiment before withdrawing to more defensible ground. Medical care was another grim reality. With supplies running out, field medics performed surgeries with little more than morphine, sulfa powder, and improvisation. At the makeshift aid station inside Bastogne, doctors operated by lantern light, often lacking anesthesia. Nurses from a nearby evacuation hospital, trapped by the encirclement, worked tirelessly alongside medics to tend to hundreds of wounded. Their presence boosted morale. One soldier later recalled that seeing a nurse in Bastogne was like seeing an angel. Despite the hardships, morale held. The famous nuts reply became a rallying cry. The men joked darkly about their situation, referring to themselves as the battered bastards of Bastogne. What kept them going was not comfort, but camaraderie. In the words of one paratrooper, "We didn't want to let the man next to us down." As Christmas approached, the situation seemed grim. Supplies were dwindling, the cold was unrelenting, and German attacks continued. But far away, General George S. Patton was already moving his Third Army north, determined to break the siege and relieve the defenders. Christmas Eve, 1944, was marked not by peace but by the thunder of artillery. The Germans intensified their bombardments, pounding Bastogne with hundreds of shells. Fires burned in the town, buildings collapsed, and civilians huddled in basements alongside American soldiers. For many paratroopers, it was the harshest Christmas they would ever endure. Some tried to keep traditions alive, a few sang carols in foxholes, others shared whatever rations they had left. One trooper in the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment later recalled eating a piece of hard candy and calling it the best Christmas dinner I ever had, because I was alive to eat it. Meanwhile, German pressure mounted on the perimeter. On December 25th, the 26th Volksgrenadier Division and elements of Panzer Lehr launched a major assault on the southern sector near Marvy. Wave after wave of infantry advanced, supported by tanks pushing through the snow. The defenders, a mix of the 327th Glider Infantry and paratroopers from the 502nd PIR, clung to their foxholes, firing rifles, machine guns, and bazookas until the barrels glowed. U.S. artillery fire, coordinated with precision, tore gaps in the German formations. After hours of brutal fighting, the attack collapsed. The line held. That same night, U.S. pilots of the 9-Troop Carrier Command risked heavy flak to deliver desperately needed supplies. For the first time since the encirclement began, skies cleared enough for large-scale drops. Parachutes carrying ammunition, food, and medical gear drifted down into American positions. Soldiers cheered, racing across open fields under fire to gather crates. One recalled stuffing his pockets with chocolate bars and cigarettes from a scattered bundle, like a kid on Halloween. The resupply did not solve every shortage, but it gave the division renewed strength to continue. Inside the town, General McAuliffe maintained calm leadership. Although technically the acting commander in place of Major General Maxwell Taylor, then stateside, McAuliffe projected steady confidence. He moved among the men, encouraging them with humor and determination. His famous nuts reply was already legend, but his daily presence at the front reassured soldiers that their commanders shared the danger. By December 26th, the siege had reached its climax. German forces launched another coordinated attack, aiming to crush Bastogne before American relief could arrive. At the same time, elements of Patton's Third Army, spearheaded by the 4th Armored Division, were fighting their way north in blizzard conditions. For days, Patton's tanks battled icy roads, blown bridges, and determined German defenses. At around 4:50 p.m. on December 26th, tanks of the 37th Tank Battalion finally broke through to Bastogne's southern perimeter near Assenois. Exhausted paratroopers watched in disbelief as American Shermans rumbled up the road. The link-up signaled the official end of the siege, though fighting would continue in the area for weeks. For the men of the 101st, relief had arrived just in time. Although Patton's tanks broke the siege on December 26th, Bastogne was far from secure. German forces continued to attack the town and its approaches into January 1945. The 101st Airborne, along with the attached units that had endured the siege, remained in their foxholes through bitter cold and continued fighting. Snowstorms blanketed the Ardennes, temperatures plummeted to near zero, and visibility dropped so low that patrols often stumbled into enemy positions by accident. Supplies now flowed more steadily, but the hardships lingered. Many paratroopers were evaluated with frostbite, trench foot, and exhaustion. Ammunition remained precious, and food was still rationed carefully. Yet compared to the days of complete encirclement, the men considered themselves lucky. One paratrooper joked in a letter home that at least now we can freeze with a full belly. The German offensive gradually lost momentum. Hitler's gamble to split the Allied lines had failed. By mid-January, the bulge had been erased, and American forces began pushing eastward again. For the 101st, Bastogne was a turning point. The division's stubborn defense denied the enemy a crucial road junction and slowed the German timetable long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The cost, however, was high. Nearly 3,000 men of the 101st were killed, wounded, or missing in the fighting around Bastogne. Countless others suffered long-term effects from frostbite and exposure. The Belgian civilians of Bastogne also paid dearly. Their homes and town were shattered by artillery fire, their lives upended by weeks of battle. In recognition of their valor, the 101st Airborne Division received the Presidential Unit Citation, the first time the entire division had been so honored. General Eisenhower later remarked that the stand at Bastogne was a defining example of American resilience in the war. For the men themselves, the memory was more personal. Many remembered the camaraderie, the dark humor, and the sheer determination that carried them through. After the war, veterans of the 101st often downplayed the legend, insisting they had simply done their duty. Yet the story of Bastogne grew in the years that followed, a symbol of grit in the face of overwhelming odds. The phrase "nuts" became shorthand for defiance, and the division's nickname, the Battered Bastards of Bastogne, was worn with pride. Today, Bastogne is remembered not only as a military victory but as a testament to endurance. Monuments stand where foxholes once dotted the frozen fields. Visitors walk the same woods where young paratroopers once shivered, fought, and refused to yield. The story of the 101st Airborne at Bastogne endures as one of World War II's defining episodes, a moment when ordinary soldiers, under extraordinary circumstances, held the line and changed the course of the war.